he had possibly the most perfect career an actor could ever dream of. And of course he did, because he became not only a famous actor, but a world hero in the days long before television, when world fame was still not at all easy. But it was the cinema, of course, that made him a world hero. For some, it was his marvellous Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights. For others, and indeed for me, it was the memory of him in that dark, bleak tower at Elsinore, pondering suicide in Hamlet. But for me, above all, it was even more the memory of his marvellous, crabbed, evil Richard III, wandering across the field of battle, screaming for a horse, a horse. And so it was the magic box of cinema that gave Olivier to the world, but over the next 2 nights, it's going to be the magic box of television that brings us Melvyn Bragg's marvellous biography, Laurence Olivier, A Life. It follows him from childhood until only a few years ago. So sit back and watch and perhaps pay a little homage to the unfolding of a wonderful life.
Laurence Olivier.
Where is it?
Where's what?
What you've done.
Oh, just sit down there. You'll see.
Now, what's that white sheet?
Earlier this year, Laurence Olivier, Lord Olivier, celebrated his 75th birthday.
This, of course, is a great old one.
For many people, public and critics alike, he's quite simply Britain's greatest actor. But his achievements have extended beyond the stage. As a film director, he was the first to bring Shakespeare successfully to the screen, and he, more than anyone, was the architect of the National Theatre. His aversion to publicity is well known, and this is the first time he's talked at length on television about his life and work. We filmed with him over a period of several months and in various locations, and despite the after effects of recent severe illnesses, he gave us his wholehearted cooperation.
And it's all quite English and thoroughly vicarage. And I suppose that's how I was brought up. And so it's quite nice.
Laurence Coeur Olivier was born in 1907 into middle-class Edwardian England. His father was an Anglo-Catholic priest, formerly a schoolmaster, and Olivier, the youngest of 3 children, grew up in awe of him.
I was, I think, generally speaking, sort of frightened. I don't think my father was a cruel man at all, but I was absolutely terrified of him. And my mother, she was my entire world. And therefore, when she died when I was 12, it was absolutely appalling. And perhaps it's good for a person, when they're young, to have a blow that can take them some getting over. And that probably does something for your character or your guts or your courage or something that helps you in other such circumstances of unhappiness or great shock or misery or anything like that, or great loss or something or somebody. I think that may, in a way, have You can't say it paid off about your mother's death, but you know what I mean. In a way, it may have been an advantage to have that grief, not to lose my mother, because that's really appalling. And I think I still do miss her, really. I think Tynan once said that he thinks it must be the loss of my mother that gives me that remoteness. He sort of put it down to some secret sorrow, something that was really held a haunting quality over my life. He wasn't the very best preacher I've ever known, but he was pretty good, and particularly in regard to the legends or the stories. He always had. It was very fashionable in that time to finish the sermon on a very, very sentimental story. I'll give you one, so you understand. There was once a dead dog lying at the side of the road. And a traveller came past and looked and said, "Only a dead dog." On he went. Another one came past and looked and said, "Oh, dead dog." And it passed. But then our Lord came by, and he said, "Pearls are not whiter than his teeth." That's the sort of thing you used to get when you see him. They used to cough up more in the offertory when the bag came round.
The church dominated Olivier's childhood. When he was 8, he entered the choir school of All Saints Church in central London, one of only 14 pupils.
I was 5 years here as a choir boy. I went on as an acolyte for some years after that. And I was married here, the first time in 1930 there. As you see, it's the most beautiful church almost I've ever seen. There, I don't know if you can see it from where you are, but there's the most exquisite lady altar, where we were taught to serve Mass every morning, as well as being choir boys. We were also acolytes.
I mean, it was a high church, and so there were vestments. I don't know, glorious, cloth of gold, I mean, real gold. It was really
Rejoice in the Lord, O ye righteous.
It was the most extraordinarily unified religion. Unified religious feeling, unified reverence, unified absolute purpose behind this religion.
Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost.
And I was brought up in that sort of religion. You would never think it now, but I was. And it's in a way, it's had its indelible mark upon me.
What will
You're obviously very moved to be back here, aren't you?
Yes, yes. Yeah. I suppose if I was too weak a morsel, a weaker vessel to continue that fervor in religious ways, I maintained that sort of fervor in anything I've done ever since. And I don't think I would have that kind of fervor. I mean, it's more than being stage-struck or ambitious. It's a kind of religious feeling about one's work.
Once more, unto the breach, dear friends, once more, or naff with our English dead.
Passionate conviction was to mark all of Olivier's great performances, and the choir school sowed the seeds in a second and equally important way. The choir boys put on complete Shakespeare plays and were accomplished enough to perform at Stratford's centenary celebration, the young Olivier playing a notable case. The school's reputation attracted the attention of some near legendary figures of the theatre.
Ellen Terry used to come and see us. Forbes Robertson used to come to see us. In her much younger days, Sybil Thorndike used to come to see us. It was a very quite a fashionable thing to do among sort of good-thinking actors and actresses, that this was worth patronizing. And it was, I think. Forbes Robertson said, this is my father's story, so I never really believed it. But the fact is, my father, after, in the interval or something, in Julius Caesar, was introduced to Forbes Robertson. And Forbes Robertson, seeing God, said, my dear sir, I'm only so happy. He said, he's not so bad, is he, my boy? And he said, which, most reverend sir, is your boy? I said, my boy is playing Brutus. He said, sir, your boy is not playing Brutus. He is Brutus. Now, that's my father's story. I never believed it either. And I know nobody else. I think you're quite right. Don't believe it.
All education is totally useless, but it does pass the time. Well, the boy can't mope around here all day long doing the crosswords till it's time he gets married.
Married? Plenty of time to think about that.
In Voyage Round My Father, Olivier the actor has some parting words for his son.
No one ever got a word of sense out of any schoolmaster. You may, at a pinch, take their word about equilateral hexagons, but life's a closed book to them.
Practicing means humbug. But life humbug.
Don't expect any advice from me, I hope. All advice is useless.
Look at Mark, your hockey stick.
You're alone in this world, and there's nothing anyone can tell you about it.
So he himself found it when he went to public school.
Well, I was looking forward to it, but it was rather a shock that I think I was pretty, generously speaking, misliked. I was disliked. I was called a sidey little shit by one and all. And, all right, I probably was. I probably appeared to be. I think my manner was extremely florid. I had played a lot of girls' parts, so no doubt I was a bit girlish. In fact, they thought I was a bit sissy, and so I probably was. I probably seemed to be. Quite a good old sis, probably. And I never was, in fact, in practice or anything to do with that in my whole life. It just happens. I'm not boasting about it. There's nothing particular to boast about. Some of my best friends are queer, and it's just like that.
Olivier's precocious acting talent marked him out for public school theatricals. Unfortunately, no pictures exist of the part which brought him his first ever review, Puck.
By far the most notable performance was that of Puck. He seemed to put more go into it than the others, and succeeded in individualizing his part. To my mind, he was a little too robust and jovial for such a quick-footed, light-fingered person, but at any rate, he gave a consistent rendering and showed by his gestures and movements that he has a knowledge of acting and a good mastery of technique.
Do you feel, looking back, that there couldn't have been a better bedding ground for your later work and enjoyment in life as an actor and director?
Well, it's hard to imagine one. I mean, I had no fight with anybody about my choice of profession. Indeed, my father was, as you will hear in a minute, I'll tell you about it. What happened was that after, when I was 16, my father and I had seen my adored brother off to India for 9 years. 4.5 and 4.5, but at age 16, 4.5 was a hell of a long time. And so I was very dreadfully upset about this parting. And, of course, my father was absolutely heartbroken. He was his eldest son. And for all he knew, he may never see him again. And in the bath that night, which usually to save water, my father had the first, then my brother came in, and then I came. So it wasn't very clean water by the time I got in. But there it was. We put up with that, all right. And it was a very friendly time always between the three of us. We could all talk very openly, just the three men in the house. And I was 16, as I said, and I'd seen my brother off to India, and we were both very sad. And when I got into the water, which was a little cleaner than usual because my brother hadn't had a go, I said to my father, when can I follow Dickie to India, please? How soon? So how long shall I have to wait before I can follow him to India? And my father said, don't be such a fool. You're not going to India. You're going on a stage. You will go up to London, and you will go to Elsie Fogarty's School of Speech Training and Dramatic Art, and you will win yourself a scholarship. And also, I hear there is a bursary for the really well-deserving. So I'm afraid if you want to be an actor, which I think you do, and I want you to too, you have not only to win the scholarship, but you must get that £50 bursary, or I can't afford to keep you in London. I went up as ordered, and as ordered, I got the scholarship, and as ordered, I got the £50 bursary, without which I would never have been an actor.
In June 1924, he dutifully presented himself for audition at the Central School at the Albert Hall before the formidable Miss Elsie Fogarty.
You're about to do your audition for Elsie Fogarty, all the world's praise.
For Elsie Fogarty, yes. So as I said, I was very elaborate in my movement. Actually,
can you remember how elaborate? It is too much to ask you to give us an idea of how
I
elaborate.
couldn't. We're talking about 1924. No, I couldn't give an imitation of myself doing it. It was just a bit much. And when she very sweetly and without any nonsense at all, with no humming and hawing, she very sweetly said, right, you have the scholarship. And I said, Miss Fogarty, my father says that I must ask for the, but she said, we'll talk about that in a minute. And she said, no, I think you are very promising. I think it's a very definite promise. You are perhaps a little bit over gesticulatory. And, for instance, I think when you say sudden and quick to quarrel, it is not necessary to accompany that with fencing movements. She said, perhaps it would be all right if you could give yourself in a speech like this just one gesture. And I thought, well, that's very funny, but how could I show her all I can do with one gesture? And she said, sans eyes, sans teeth, sans whatever the next thing is. Sans everything. Yes, she did it so beautifully that I thought, yeah, I see, thanks. And it was very good. Lasted with me a long time, forever, in fact.
I lack iniquity sometimes to do me service. 9 or 10 times I had thought, but yes, in here, under the red tree, is better as it is. Nay, but he praises.
A fellow student at the school was Peggy Ashcroft.
It was rather a rum setup, because in those days, a drama school, at this particular drama school, there were 5 men students and 8 girls. So, actually, they were a sort of rare specimen, and he was, you might say, a bit uncouth, I would say. His hair stood on end, and his sleeves were rather short, and he was extremely energetic and physical.
I did get hungry, as I said, and my lunch was a bun and a glass of milk. A lot of other students had that. It was all right. There was nothing tremendously martyrish about that. And my dinner would be a sandwich at a coffee stall at the end of Warwick Avenue, where I lived in Castellane Road next to Warwick Avenue, and I would have that and perhaps a cup of coffee. I used to treat myself occasionally to a visit to the Express Dairy and get myself a small pot of tea and a little bit of cakey or something. But I wasn't very well fed. I was just enough to keep me alive about, but I was always terribly thin. I'm still. It was years before I dared expose these noble proportioned limbs before the public, and I didn't dare until I played Oedipus, when I had done so much exercising to remedy the situation over the years of my life. Tremendous physical exercise I had taken, and with terribly little results, very disappointing results. But I went on and on and on and on and on until finally, whenever I played a part in tights, of course there was that perfectly beautiful padding we used to get from Burnett's at the bottom of, it's in Covent Garden. And that was all right. You were always all right in tights, you see. And you didn't often, in playing the part of Romeo or Mercutio or anything like that, you didn't often take your top off. For no reason to in those parts, so that you didn't give away the wires hanging from these shoulders. So that was all right. And after a while, I did work up enough physique to dare to show myself. I think I always kept the left arm sort of covered in a cloak, but I was able to show this arm like that, and occasionally do a gesture like that, setting them up a little bit, sort of thing about. And occasionally I sort of got used to the idea of myself of being more or less uncovered, and my legs I dared show, because they're slightly improved by the addition of a little paint. Sometimes. You shave them, you see, or you take them off with depilatory, whichever you prefer. And if you shave them, people you happen to be in bed with are apt to complain because it prickles. Therefore, you usually get quickly onto the depilatory, even when you're quite young. And so that was done, and always has been ever since. And I wouldn't, for the audience's sake now, expose myself very proudly. Because, aged 74, I'm not Tarzan anyway, and I'm not godlike.
Well, I suppose I first met him in 1926, wasn't it, when we were working with the Birmingham Repertory Company. Well, that's about more than 50 years we've known each other, isn't it? Well, very nice to talk. Very charming and delightful companionship we've had. 50 years and never a cross word. We worked together, we've been together as friends, we've been together as partners in work. I've been directed by him, we've directed plays together. Every kind of experience. Very delightful fellow. Nice company. Sweet nature. I get a bit gloomy, but never, always keeps his cool. Never passionately cross.
How did you exactly set about becoming a professional actor?
Usual way, sitting on agents' doorsteps in Charing Cross Road, I think it is. And that's it. Just sitting and waiting. Won't Mr. Barry O'Brien see me now? No, Mr. Barry O'Brien's just gone out. I'm just, But will you tell him I called? Will you do this? Will you do that? I finally got a job in London in a theatre in Notting Hill Gate. It used to be called the Lena Ashwell Players. Miss Lena Ashwell was an actress of some fame and repute. But being a horrible, hideous little Bulgarian. And because he used to play swimming baths, that was a very good date and the most awful sort of, not awful of talks, but town halls in the environs of London. I'm afraid I dubbed them rather quickly the lavatory players. And that's, I think, they were known for as long as they lived. And there it was. It gave me a little 6 weeks' work, 2 different parts, I think. I was always the damnedest fool, I'd always spoil something. When I got the chance, I would giggle until they had to fire me. Now, I was starving, and I hadn't got that much. I hadn't got any sense at all. But I don't know how I survived it. That's all. I don't know how I'm sitting here with you there. I just don't know. Because I was up to work. Ever there was. And there it was. I was fired for several jobs for giggling.
Giggling on stage?
Yes. I couldn't help it. I just couldn't help it. There was one instance in this company, I must say, which was a little hard to take, in which I think I could have been forgiven. But I wasn't famous. Well, it was that I was playing Flavius in Romeo and Julius Caesar. And Flavius who says, "Hence home, you idle creatures, get you home. Is this a holiday?" And somebody in the crowd would say, "Yes." What? To give it a what. No, you not, something or other. And I was doing that, and Morales was a rather well-covered actor, who was quite good, and he became an author, and very successful one. Well, because he was the elder and the more leading of the two actors between Flavius and Morales. Morales had the big speech, "Knew you not Pompey," and all that. And he, of course, had the privilege of stepping onto that grey painted beer box, which was the only washroom they had in the company. And up he got, and draping his toga round him carefully, he got a little too passionate during his oration, and when he said, "Knew you not Pompey," like that, he said, and something burst here, and his pants fell down and fell round his feet, over the box to the floor, all the way round. He was imprisoned, absolutely couldn't move, and neither could I speak. All I could do was move, and off the stage I moved as quickly as I could. I mean, that was a little forgivable. It was rather exceptional. But I think, so serious were people in those days. I don't think the audience laughed. Perhaps they could hardly have realized the extreme predicament in which this wretched actor found itself. Anyway, I was fired for that.
In Tennyson's play, Harold, and I was Gurth, messenger from the Pope. I remember, I used to laugh. It was terrible, it was very naughty. But I was never able to remember it still. There was one line, "Harold, I was coming from the Pope. My name was Gurth." And I said, "The Pope has sent his holy Gonfanon." He's a holy Gonfanon. I said, "Oh." I had something like this. He said, "The Pope has sent his holy Gonfanon." I stopped laughing, and we both were there. His holy Gonfanon. I don't know whether there's anything frightfully funny about it, but he sort of made it as if it was a very kind of strange thing to say. His holy Gonfanon.
In his 18 months with the Birmingham Rep, Olivier played in 14 productions. By the age of 21, he'd already moved to the London stage, playing in West End productions. In one of these, he met the young actress who was to become his first wife, Jill Esmond.
One day he had a little moustache. I said, what's that? He said, "My moustache." I said, "What do you want the moustache for?" He said, "Well, Douglas Fairbanks wears a moustache, didn't he?" Well, the moustache came off, but somehow the panache that Douglas Fairbanks gave to his swashbuckling part, he kept a little bit of that. He always has such a panache, such an air, such a gay. That I think he caught that from with his moustache. We were going down to Brighton. There were no lights in those days at the crossroads. We came down Croydon, right past the Edinburgh. It was a terribly dangerous fort. And we went down about 35 miles an hour, went straight at it. That night, I said, Laurence, I'll never forgive you for that. It's the most terrible thing to do. Without looking right or left, the four crossroads and go like that. I was very cross. I said I'd never crossed it, and I was very cross. He said, well, when you meet a point of considerable danger, pass over it as quickly as you can.
Olivier had every reason to enjoy life in the London of the 20s. He was moving confidently in a new society, and he was rising very fast in his chosen profession. He'd won great personal glory in at least 8 productions, but he'd never yet been in a long-running hit. That changed when Noel Coward cast him in his glittering comedy, Private Lives. The character was Victor Prince, a Suffolk-conformist, a stooge to reflect the brilliance of Coward and his partner, Gertrude Lawrence.
So you see, there was Adrian Allen, Laurence Olivier, Gertrude Lawrence, and me. And Larry had never... I hit him on the head to make him play it, because it really isn't a very good part, Victor. But I wanted not to have him cast as an ordinary stuffed shirt, because I don't think Amanda would ever have married. I said I must have somebody who's physically very attractive. Otherwise, Amanda would never have married him. He must have something to give. He hasn't got much in the dialogue way. And poor Larry never really enjoyed playing it very much. I think he enjoyed acting it with me. We had great fun. But it really, curiously enough, did him a lot of good.
Noel Coward also confronted Olivier's onstage giggling.
Oh, it was a form of hysteria, of course. And it just had to break out. Had to be taught, to be controlled, had to be learned. Just had to be. And he did.
How did he do that?
By deliberately saying, look, you're a giggler and I'm going to cure you. And I tell you how I'm going to do it. I warn you. I'm going to make you giggle all I can. And between Gertie and me, we can do it. Anytime we feel like it, we can kill you. And you know it. Now, I'm going to go on doing that. And at the end of the performance, I'm going to tick you off in front of the entire cast and the stage staff every time you do it. And you are going to learn not to. It took 7 months.
There's a silly game we used to play as boys. There's a book that comes out every year called The Spotlight. Everyone sort of knows all the actors and the actresses put their photographs in it. And we had a little game that we used to play. You had to shut your eyes. You had to open the spotlight this way. You had to lick, and you had to go and say, I'm just out, what is it? And say, kiss my tits. I'm just out of the bath. And you have to look and see who you saw. And sometimes it referred to very unlikely people. You're lucky if you caught a pretty girl.
With his ever-acute eye for new opportunities and his enormous appetite for work, Olivier was there at the start of that fledgling industry, the talking pictures. Here he is, in no funny business, with Jill Esmond.
Darling, you look divine.
Orders, madam.
Yes, please. I've never seen you look so handsome as you do tonight. Oh, my precious.
Sardines.
Oh, thank you.
Tonight is the most wonderful I've ever known. My adorable...
Onion.
Yes, please. Oh, no onion. Sardine. Your eyes are like the blue of the sea. I feel as if I was swimming in...
Potato salad?
Yes. Yes, please. Darling, you're not eating anything.
My angel. I'm much too happy to eat.
So am I.
But Olivier knew that America was the center of the film business, and he set off for Hollywood.
When I first went to Hollywood, I was only 24. I was just a kid again. And I was under contract to RKO.
The new arrivals hailed the opening of RKO's new studios while keeping the flag flying for the home industry.
Ladies and gentlemen, may a comparatively young English actor offer his very humble congratulations to those who have initiated this enterprise. Hollywood has set a very high standard of production, but I know perfectly well that the British brain and the British capital, embodied in these and the other British studios, will make the British picture Hollywood's most successful writer.
The system of making films did not appeal to him. I don't think it appealed to a great many people who were involved with him. But he, coming from the theater, was more than disappointed, particularly because Jill, his wife, then was enjoying more success than he was. And he was known as a young Englishman, rather self-conscious, a little too thin, could be a younger Ronald Colman, and was Jill Esmond's husband. Well, he naturally that didn't appeal to him, to his sense of pride very much. And that discouraged him a good deal. He wasn't getting many jobs.
Oh, as you were. Jeffrey, dear old boy, it's like being home again. Steady, old son, how are you? Huh? Tell me all about it. I'm hungry for gossip.
Gossip? I'm full of it. It'll take months for the setting. Honestly, Jeffrey, it's wonderful, isn't it, being here together?
Now, don't gush, Nettie.
Huh? No, of course not. Dear old boy.
Dear old boy. How do you like your quarters? I think you'll find it a bit rough after you're found in town.
Hmm? Oh, simply luxurious, Jeff. That cot looks downright cozy. And that armchair, genuine antique, isn't it? Oh, I love it all, really, Jeff. See here, Jeffrey. We can't have this sort of thing. It's much too frivolous.
Why, even McNellis says that's art. And you always like
I'm a changed man, Jeffrey. I'm in love.
I made 3 pictures in 2 years. It was a very bad crash time in 1931. And I stayed the whole of 31, most of 32, before I gave up and came back. Got 3 pictures in 2 years, honestly. And I tried to write a play, and that was, of course, disaster.
It wasn't enough work for you.
Nothing like, no, nothing.
I will always remember how he was getting excited about coming back to England. For me, it was a sort of honeymoon at that time, which didn't work out, alas. But as we got closer to the UK, he got more and more sentimental, probably aided and abetted by a cocktail or two. And when we first sighted the Scilly Isles coming out, he practically wept with patriotic joy and sentiment.
And he came back with a very fast car, a Cadillac. Brought it over from New York. And he said, you'd like to drive this, wouldn't you, Ralph? I said, I would. Well, we were naughty in those days, and of course, wasn't nearly as much traffic as there. I took it from Piccadilly all the way down Piccadilly at 85 miles an hour. Which is a very naughty and perilous thing to do. And as we drew up, Laurence said, you know, Ralph, it could have gone faster than that. So that's the difference between our nature.
In Hollywood, Olivier had encountered his first serious setback, but his capacity to take risks was undiminished. In 1935, he left the lucrative commercial theatre for Shakespeare. He played both Romeo and Mercutio in a production at the New Theatre that was to change his life.
To my secret self, I always thought of myself as a classical actor. I mean, my choir boy days were concerned with classical roles in Shakespeare. And my very first effort was an alternating job with Johnny Gielgud.
Well, I had the idea that it would be a good idea to alternate the parts, and I offered it to Robert Donat, who was planning a production of his own, and he refused it for that reason. And then I offered it to Olivier, who was not then, of course, a great star, but I had worked with him the year before on a play called Queen of Scots, which I directed. He played Bothwell, and took over from Richardson, who gave it up. But anyhow, he was also planning a production, but he offered to give it up to play in mine, which was extremely generous of him. And from the beginning, we got on extremely well.
Juliet was played by Peggy Ashcroft.
He was a very striking, handsome young man then. I think the ironic part of it was that, critically, as you probably know, John won the applause of the critics. Whereas, to my mind, the perfect... Larry was, to me, the definitive Romeo. And Larry succeeded in this, in playing a young man of 16 who was in love with love to start with and then was suddenly hit by it. And then was hopelessly impetuous, passionate, foolish, rash. And I think that the tragedy, as we played it, was the tragedy of two children destroyed by hate and enmity of their houses.
Mr. Olivier can play many parts. Romeo is not one of them. His blank verse is the blankest I've ever heard.
I made a terrible flop as Romeo, because they said I couldn't speak verse. That was a laughable thing. From my point of view, I couldn't speak. I was brought up speaking verse. I've been speaking verse since I was 8 years old. What are they talking about? It's ridiculous. But I didn't sing it, you see. And the fashion was, perhaps, to sing it.
And I think we did have a certain amount of argument about how the text should be spoken. But I don't know what my Shakespeare acting was like in those days. I saw myself in the Chimes at Midnight the other night with such horror. I thought I was like an old operatic diva singing. And I hope I didn't act like that on the stage.
Ah, Juliet, if that the honey of thy breath. You say, ah, Juliet, if that the honey of thy breath. You know, that's singing. And a lot of people swoon at that. Fine. You've got to find something that makes people swoon, but would make you swoon, too. And you can't divorce yourself from what is your avowed intention, which is to be real on the stage, somehow.
And Larry was one of the actors, I think, who made me feel that he was very realistic, perhaps too realistic in his approach to classical characters. And then I began to see how right he was and how much more in tune with the modern world it was to make Shakespeare sound absolutely modern.
For the next few years, Olivier devoted himself to Shakespeare, including this early venture on film.
Hang there, my verse, in witness of my love. And thou, thrice-crowned Queen of Night, survey with thy chaste eyes from thy pale sphere above thy huntress name that my full life doth sway. O Rosalind, these trees shall be my books, and in their barks my thoughts I'll carry, that every eye which in this forest looks shall see thy virtue witnessed everywhere. Run, run, Orlando. Carve on every tree the fair, the chaste, the unexpressive.
In 1937, he secured himself a whole season at the Old Vic.
I started with Hamlet. Started with the big one. I thought I'd better both get the agony over. Get all the bad notices. Then maybe they'll be a little kinder.
He brings a natural energy and a special tenderness of sympathy that are his own. This handsome, brilliant actor...
Not an intellectually brilliant Hamlet, but it combines its intelligence with grace.
Well, on the whole, it went all right. There were things against it that people found and things for it that people found. It was an unusually athletic Hamlet, I guess.
Well, he developed to his greatness rather slowly, of course. He didn't spring into it, fully armed. But he was tremendously daring, tremendously brave. Frightened the life out of me. He said, my goodness, I'm going down to the beach. I said, I know, that's rather interesting. Yes, I said, what are you going to play? He said, I'm going to play Macbeth. I said, what, Macbeth? He said, yes. I said, you break in this, my dear boy. I don't want to play Macbeth, Joy. Be very, very careful. Well, he was fine as Macbeth. He made a tremendous lot of noise. I can't think why I made so much noise. Very, very loud performance. But it was very, very, very powerful. And very splendid. And very brave to do such a thing. He didn't care down.
Olivier's Macbeth registers another step in a career of considerable achievement and increase.
Mr. Laurence Olivier has transformed himself as Sir Toby only by a gleam of the teeth which he now and then recognized.
It is a week since I saw Olivier's Coriolanus, and I cannot get his performance out of my head.
His Coriolanus is a pillar of fire on a plinth of marble.
One of Olivier's greatest fans in the mid-30s was a rising young actress called Vivien Leigh. She was determined to meet him. Soon, they were acting together.
Yes. And foolish.
Why foolish? You love me, don't you? Well, that's it.
Everyone's the right to be happy, Michael. Everyone, yes. That is why we can't be.
The marriage to Jill Esmond was now over. They'd had one child. In 1938, the Old Vic Company presented Hamlet at Elsinore. With some help from Olivier, Vivien Leigh's career had progressed. She now played Ophelia to his Hamlet. On their return from Denmark, they began living together. It was a partnership that was to thrill the public and one that would bring its full share of pain as well as happiness to Laurence Olivier. In 1938, Olivier was back in America, back in Hollywood. Hollywood he returned to was now in full flight as a rumbustious, multi-million-dollar business. Secure in his theatrical reputation at home, Olivier once again was ready to seek its reward.
Did you see yourself as a film star? Or?
No, not at all. I despised it along with most of my generation and way of thinking.
And why did you go there?
I did it because I had to do it.
because I wanted to go on with... I didn't want to give up classical acting and become a West End actor entirely. And I wished very much to have the wherewithal to live while I was being so artistic. And that depends upon film, nothing else.
The turning point was a film he made for Sam Goldwyn.
I remember having dinner with him and Vivian Leigh. They were living in a little house on Christchurch Street. And it was a bit of a scandal around London because they were both still married to other people. But anyway, we had dinner and I offered this part, Heathcliff, to Larry Olivier, and he was not very enthusiastic. And I thought, my God, what's wrong with this? A great script, a great story, a marvelous part. What is it? No, he was not very keen on it.
His reluctance was partly due to William Wyler's refusal to cast Vivian Leigh in the lead as Cathy. That part was promised to Merle Oberon.
Sam Goldwyn didn't think much of me at all. I remember one day he arrived, and I had a very bad foot. I had a horrible thing called athlete's foot. And I had it so bad that the foot, it was this foot, I think, swelled right up, all round, and I couldn't put any shoes on at all. I had to wrap my feet round with bandage and simply hobble about and just do close-ups or sit on one of those revolving seats and turn round and round and round, doing the very close stuff, which is often done. Constantly to practice in films when somebody can't walk for some reason or other. And there it was. And I saw Sam Goldwyn come on and talk to Willie Wyler. And they kept looking towards me, and I thought, I think, actually, if I went up and hobbled up, Goldwyn would hold out his arm and say, Willie, you must send this poor, unfortunate fellow home. He looks dreadfully tired. We've got to rest him now. I said, if I play it right, I limp well enough, it'll be all right. And I limped well enough, and sure enough, as I approached, he held his arm out, and I put my shoulder underneath his hand where it rested, and he said, Willie, if this actor goes on playing the way he is, close up the picture. Will you look at that actor's ugly face? That actor was standing here. Will you look at that? If I was an object of some extraordinary height. He's dirty. His performance is rotten. It's stagey. It's just nothing. It's not real for a minute. I won't have it. Now, if he doesn't improve, I'm going to close up the picture.
He didn't, of course. But Olivier's attitude and acting style brought him into head-on conflict with the notoriously acerbic William Wyler.
I once heard myself saying two things. I was overacting appallingly and doing some extravagant gesture. And he'd say, keep stopping me and say, Christ, say, what do you think you're doing? You think you're at the Opera House, Manchester or something? What are you doing? Well, come down to earth. Come on. I want it so I know you mean it. I don't want a great performance. I don't want this sort of skylarking. And he'd stop and say, tell me, Larry, what dimension do you reckon you've got to now? And he absolutely bullied it out of me. And eventually, he made me, he sweetly, because we hadn't gotten on at all. I had heard myself saying awful things I was about to tell you just now. I suppose this anemic little medium can't take great acting. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I could hardly believe it as it came out of my mouth.
You said that, did you?
Yes.
in front of the whole set, and the laugh that came from the gantries, from all round, from every stage, and William, I thought he'd never stop laughing. And all the other actors, they were dying at this pompous little twat. This appalling thing about their sacred. To them it was sacred. You see, to us it was despised. Not only because it wasn't above theater, but because there was money in it. And that was another reason for despising it. Now, our lovely, darling American cousins have always had a very healthy respect for money. And if you do something in which there is money, it's a very respectable thing to do. And we've always been too pompous for that, see? And I'd gotten onto that idea, and then I got onto the idea when he really bawled me out and bawled me out and bawled me out and made me feel a jackass. And I was. He was right to make me. I was a fool, a stupid, conceited, pompous little bastard.
I wonder if I did a very selfish thing in marrying you.
How do you mean?
I'm not much of a companion to you, am I?
In 1939, Olivier starred in Rebecca, opposite Joan Fontaine.
You ought to have married a boy. Someone of your own age.
Maxim, why do you say this?
The film was directed by Alfred Hitchcock, and Olivier played the role of the romantic hero Max de Winter for all it was worth.
I'm very difficult to live with.
No, you're not difficult. You're easy, very easy. Our marriage is a success, isn't it? A great success? We're happy, aren't we? Terribly happy. You don't think we are happy? It would be much better if you didn't pretend. I'll go away. Why don't you answer me?
How can I answer you when I don't know the answer myself? If you say we're happy, let's leave it at that. Happiness is something I know nothing about. Oh, look. There's the one when I left the camera running on the tripod.
The film helped make Olivier a star. But change had also overtaken Vivien Leigh. Denied the lead as Cathy in Wuthering Heights, she'd also turned down the supporting role of Isabella in that film.
I said, look, I tried to talk her into it. I said, look, Vivien, you're not yet known in America. Someday you may be a great star, but you're not yet known. And for a first part, you'll never get anything better than Isabella. I made this deathless prediction. I guess she showed me. He came over and played Scarlett O'Hara.
Premiere of the film of Gone with the Wind, in which the chief part of Scarlett O'Hara is played by Britain's own Vivien Leigh, and here she is.
The Oliviers were film stars, but their dream of starring together seemed to elude them. Vivien Leigh had, in fact, tested with Olivier for the lead in Rebecca.
I wonder if I was very selfish in marrying you.
What do you mean?
I'm not much of a companion to you, am I?
Oh, Maxim, darling.
This unique film gives a glimpse of what might have been.
Why do you say these things to me? You know I love you more than anything in the world. You're my father, my brother, and my son. All these things.
I'm difficult to live with. You don't get much fun, do you?
Of course you're not difficult. You're easy, very easy. And it's absurd to say we aren't companions. Why, look how we sit down every evening. You with your paper or books, and me with my knitting. Like an old couple married for years and years.
Rifle on a bright afternoon. The German-Soviet non-aggression pact has just been signed, and Hitler comes to Berlin from his retreat at Berchtesgaden. The decision of peace or war rests with that one man. We know now what the decision was to be. For here begins the series of fatal events leading to war. Britain declares war, and they may need the air raid shelters they're digging. Trenches in London Park.
I was in the middle of Rebecca when the war was declared. Middle of making it. And we had a huge party given by Doug Jr., for which he'd taken a yacht, and all of us there. Tremendous boatload of people, and we heard it over the radio. Came over at 11 o'clock in the morning in Hollywood. Chamberlain's speech. And I think everybody, certainly me, burst floods of tears at once. But as the day wore on, we decided to have a solemn drink and then a little more bravado with a second. Somehow Larry, I think, had a third, and perhaps a fourth. And we looked around and found that he'd gone. Where had he gone? We're on a boat. The dinghy had gone, a little rowboat behind us. He had been rowing around the harbor of the yacht club basin where we were anchored, and going to the stern of a lot of other boats, large and small, and standing up in his rowboat and lecturing them, saying, "You've all had it. Enjoy your last moment. This is the finish. From now on, the end of all of this," and then say terribly insulting and awful things about the people who were sitting on their deck, and also rather glum about the world. He'd get back in the boat and row on to the next boat. Well, we found all this out later on. He came back, and we thought nothing about it until later on. A message came out from the Commodore of the Yacht Club saying that there had been a tremendous amount of protest, that Mr. Ronald Coleman had been going around the harbor insulting all the members of the Yacht Club and demanded an immediate apology. It was perhaps poignantly appalling to us because we were not home. And that felt appalling, dreadful, wrong, cowardly. I was never so unhappy in my life. And neither was my wife, eventually. I stayed until we sort of could get married. I thought somehow it would be better to be married when we came home for things like leave or special dispensations.
Well, I lost him, and I feel better for it.
Before returning, Olivier played Nelson to Vivian Lee's Emma Hamilton in Lady Hamilton.
Telling me of the repeated dispatches from the Admiralty. He also wanted me to put on a little performance for it. Act 1, Emma Hamilton expresses a sudden desire to see the Sphinx and the Pyramid. Act 2, Lord Nelson pleads, Emma Hamilton remains adamant. Act 3, Emma Hamilton departs for Egypt. And Lord Nelson returns to London, a sadder and wiser man. Poor William. He was so serious about it all. I was convinced he was only thinking of your career. I could see he'd been puzzling through all sorts of stories, and the only one that hadn't occurred to him was the truth. How silly. How utterly silly to think that we should need lives, you and I.
You know, the Blitz and all that was going, and I really felt to myself that I was losing my birthright, and I simply couldn't stand it.
Oh, my darling. What is the truth? Should I have put on that comedy for you?
Might have helped, perhaps.
Oh, no.
I cannot put it off any longer. I must go back this time. They want me to go alone.
In America, Olivier had learned to fly in order to join the Fleet Air Arm. At 33, he was too old for active service, but a vital role soon emerged. people wanted Laurence Olivier to in some way represent the nation. It was a call he responded to with total dedication. He appeared in morale-boosting films and was also quite prepared, as here in the Albert Hall, to speak out in his own voice.
We will go forward. Heart, nerve, and spirit steeled. We will attack. We will smite our foes. We will conquer. And in all our deeds, in this land and in other lands, from this hour on, our watchwords will be urgency, speed, courage. Urgency in all our decisions, speed in the execution of all our plans, courage in face of all our enemies. And may God bless our cause.
When he made Henry V, Olivier realized his vision of England's essential spirit.
As far as I was concerned, it may as well be the first Shakespeare film. So as far as I was concerned, it was the first Shakespeare film.
Shakespeare's drama of the famous English victory at Agincourt made excellent propaganda. It was also a stunning debut as a film director for Olivier, bringing Shakespeare to life in a completely new way.
I needed a style that would make the acting look more real. You see, supposing I had used outside of a castle, Kenilworth Castle, as it is now, or some bits of it could, usable. You'd say, yes, very nice, very real, absolutely real castle. You can see it's absolutely real. Oh, it's all the look of it, and those trees and those are absolutely real and quite normal. Why are they talking so funny? And that's what I had to avoid.
The king is set from London, and the scene is now transported, gentle, to Southampton. There is the playhouse now. There must you sit. And thence to France shall we convey you safe, and bring you back, charming the narrow sea, to give you gentle part.
The difficulty being the language. Your only hope was for the background to be more unreal than the language, so that the language seemed real. That was my little thought. And it was a happy one.
Oh, that we now had here but 10,000 of those men in England who do not work today.
What's he that wishes so? My cousin Westmoreland? No, my fair cousin. If we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country loss. And if to live, the fewer men, the greater share of honor. God's will, I pray thee, wish not one man more. Rather proclaim it, Westmoreland, through my host, that he which hath no stomach to this feast, let him depart. His passport shall be drawn, and crowns for convoy put into his purse. We would not die in that man's company that fears his fellowship to die with us.
What about the speaking of the verse in Henry V? You talked about making it seem very real. Did you? You speak it very deliberately and very, very clearly.
In the speaking of Shakespeare, you do not give way entirely to the music of Shakespeare, because that is too much in one direction. In the other direction, it is wronger than ever to pretend you're speaking prose. That is very wrong. What you have to find the truth through the verse. Now, if that's understandable, then that's the only answer I can give you.
This day is called the Feast of Crispian. He that outlives this day and comes safe home will stand a tiptoe when this day is named, and rouse him at the name of Crispian. He that shall live this day and see old age will yearly on the vigil feast his neighbors and say, tomorrow is St. Crispian. Then will he strip his sleeve and show his scars and say, these wounds I had on Crispin's day. Old men forget, yet all shall be forgot, but he'll remember with advantages what feats he did that day. Then shall our names, familiar in his mouth as household words, Harry the King, Bedford and Exeter, Warwick and Talbot, Salisbury and Gloucester, be in their flowing cups freshly remembered. This story shall the good man teach his son, and Crispin shall ne'er go by from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother, be he ne'er so base. And gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhood cheap, while any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's day. Lord, we're carrying ourselves with speed. The French are bravely in their battle set and move with all expedience. Charge on us! All things are ready if our minds be so. Then it's the man whose mind is backward now. Thou dost not wish more help from England, cuz? God's will, my liege. Would you and I alone without more help could fight this battle out? You know your places. God be with you all!
The film's demand for open landscape, for horses and able-bodied men to ride them, precluded filming in wartime England, and most of the film was shot in Ireland, with Irish farmers as the soldiers.
It's very amusing. Once, I made one mistake, sort of, to give them confidence. I made a sort of lecturing opening talk, which I said, I may ask you to do things that are difficult. I may ask you to do things that are sometimes perhaps dangerous. But please believe me, if you wish me, I shall never ask you to do anything that I'm not at least willing to try to do myself. That was the most fatal utterance I ever made in my whole life, because whatever it was, I said, now listen, Jack, dear boy, all you got to do is you come under this tree now. Now, Murphy, Mr. Murphy, if you get up on that branch, and as he passes under you, you jump down and get him, bring him to the ground, and somebody whacks a horse down and takes him out of the shot. We'd like to see you do it first, please, Mr. Oliver. Whatever. Oh, God mercy. Oh, how I repented for those words. They were so angelic, though, but they just did like to see me do it first. It's very natural. But of course I wasn't the horseman that they were. Anything like. Anyhow, I got onto this goddamn branch, which was all of 20 feet off the ground at least, if not 25, and I got up on it. And having called along, got in, I said, it's perfectly easy. You put your feet here, and you... hands, I think, are better here on the feet, each side probably. And then when the horse passes underneath you... And for a moment I thought I'm going to be too frightened to do it. I really haven't got the nerve, I haven't got the courage. However, when I did start, my feet were holding me there. And I couldn't slide my feet off without letting go my hands, which would have killed me. So eventually I did sort of manage to get the feet off. And I said, it's perfectly simple. All you do is this, and I knew I was going to have to do something dangerous, which was to lift myself up off the branch and then swing and hold on with my hand and then let go. I got it done eventually. And, of course, as I went, that sharp pain through one ankle told me what I'd done. I had very badly sprained an ankle. So I said, you see, it's perfectly simple. Perfectly simple. As I told you, excuse me, I just got another tree. I am pretending to go and look for another tree. And, of course, I was just hiding myself from the assembled company. And then when I was safely at the other side of the tree, I burst into tears. Uttering pain that I'd given myself in my ankle. However, all was well. They sort of took it all in good part.
gentlemen, but all's not done. Yet keep the French the field.
Henry V was a triumph. Olivier had conceived, directed, and starred in it. He was 35 years old. Secure in his chosen profession, he was making significant strides in a new one. Married to one of the world's most beautiful women, and with peace and its promises just over the horizon.